That's friends you wish you had. That's friends you wish you had.
So today I wanted to talk about something called AI avatars. Have you ever heard of an AI avatar?
They're everywhere, right?
They're everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere. But do you know what one is? Like if I said, hey, did you see that AI avatar? Would you know what the fuck I'm talking about?
I would say more often than not I do, but I'm sure there are very good ones that I don't necessarily recognize.
Got it. So I feel like just for starters, I want to talk about what an AI avatar is. So we see all this AI generated video on social media, YouTube, whatever. And most of it actually is not AI avatars. It's just AI creating interesting images. So when you see things like Trump dancing with Putin or Elon Musk, some kind of political thing like that, or you see something like there's a guy who makes animals come to life out of his kids' drawings. Those are not AI avatars. That's just AI video. And so when you look on your social media and you have someone selling you athletic greens, or I don't call about brands specifically. So when you see someone selling a health supplement, or you see someone selling some kind of new exercise thing, chances are these days, and this wasn't true like 3 months ago, but chances are these days that is an AI avatar. It's a completely fake human that's designed to look like UGC content, user-generated content of someone who just actually had this experience. So when they're sharing with you how easy it is to film with this little gadget that you could buy for your camera, or to eat this supplement and get really strong, they've never done it because they are actually a machine, not a human.
Skynet saw all humans as a threat and decided our fate in a microsecond. Extermination.
And it's cheaper for the brand, essentially. That's what they're getting out of this.
It's super cheaper. But where it's really cheaper is they can do 100,000 different variations. So if I wanted to hire an actor to do something like that, I would have to, pay them to do each version of it I wanted to try. But you can constantly change what your AI avatar is saying and iterate. Like if you look at the Facebook ads for a company that doesn't use AI avatars, they might be having like nine videos running at any time at Meta, so they're testing different things. And then you look at a company that uses AI avatars, they'll have 100 videos, 100 different ads running at the same time, because they're just constantly iterating and changing. That's what you could do with an AI avatar that you can't do with a human. And then companies are using them too. I mean, the biggest news last week, Google dropped a new application, a new tool called Vids. It's only available to workspace users, meaning companies that use Google, or AI users of Google. But it's basically a video editor that integrates AI and avatars that's designed for corporate video. They're basically trying to replace corporate video. So they're trying to replace you and I with some person at their desk who can type up what an AI avatar says, and then all the trainings will be as vacuous and vacant as the corporation they're coming from. Basically, you take the idea of DEI, and it's exclusion. Instead of inclusion, we're just going to exclude all the people completely, and instead we're going to have an AI talking to you about how you shouldn't sexually harass your colleague, despite the fact that this is an LLM. It's a machine.
I mean, I think it's the AI avatar training the AI employees
exactly
on how to behave, and they just go through the performative step to make the AI employee feel more human in some futuristic dystopian, corporate AI drama.
Yeah,
and
that's about the size of it.
And the one AI worker bee who thinks he's more or she's more.
Yeah, totally.
But I'm interested, you don't classify these sort of deep fake AI creations as AI avatars. You're saying this is sort of like a separate lane.
Yeah, I mean, I think
because they're original, because they're
sometimes the deep fakes are AI avatars. Sometimes they're not. For me, it's about passing. So sometimes some people, I want to be clear, some people use this word to define all kinds of things so that you can have animated AI avatars. But I'm talking about something really specific, and the way that I define it is that you're passing. So you could have that video of Trump and Putin dancing. This is not designed to pass as real life. It's in slow motion, it's cinematic, it's overdone, it's crazy. It's clearly trying to make a statement, and it's using AI video to do it, which is cool, but it's not passing. So the same thing isn't true for there are all kinds of ways that you can use an AI avatar. You could use one of Trump, but if you're trying to make it look like Trump is actually saying the thing, if it's passing as Trump, then it's an AI avatar. That's where I'm making the distinction. Are you passing as human, or are you just making cool video with AI?
But you're sort of defining it as you're creating this original personality.
No, I'm saying,
which is nothing wrong with that.
So perfect example. So there's a guy who had a problem that we all sort of contend with problems like this. He had a daughter, and he found her vibrator in the bathroom, and he was looking for a way to talk to her about it that it's kind of an embarrassing situation. So here, let me play you a clip of how he used AI avatars to do this.
Sweetheart, there's no reason to be embarrassed, but I found your green goblin, or that's what your mother used to call it. You should be a bit more careful about what you leave in the bathroom. Your younger brother is in there all the time for like hours on end. Please keep these things private.
I would just say, as parenting advice, this is not the way to go. Your kid's going to be in therapy telling this story to somebody someday.
That's true. It's true.
But I mean, I like your definition a little bit because it's not as insidious. It's not as like it's there to trick you. It's more a function of economy, or sort of, there's a sort of like a tool to have a business or something to, help connect with their audience a little bit. It's not perfect, or maybe it's not even meant to feel that realistic, but it's just there to sort of convey information in a different way, as opposed to like a deep fake, where you're creating this avatar to like impersonate, somebody doing something embarrassing or something like that.
Yeah, I think right now they're used to sell shit, like I said. So the potential for what you're talking about is there. I do think there's a gap. Like, I think it's harder for people in our generation and our boomer parents to recognize the gap, but it's still there. There's still a gap between an AI person and a human. But
I'm not even sure how important it is to be able to notice. In a way, I don't mean about people being fooled or tricked.
Well, this is an interesting question. Why do you think that? I'm curious.
Well, because if I have an online community to teach people how to fix light bulbs, and I want to give a little instructional course on how to, or fix light sockets, and I create an AI avatar that's like Gene the handyman, and he's like, here's how to do it. Whether, on one hand, that just might be a more creative way to convey the information. Gene might be better at it than I am, if I like in terms of an on-camera presence or whatever it is. Like, the information is not necessarily untrue. Even if I'm selling a product, like if someone's pitching you a magical nutraceutical online, and whether they're using an AI avatar, or they're using some, nameless, faceless person to do it, if the thing is bunk, it's bunk, if it's a real product and this is how you choose to sell it, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I feel like particularly people in our generation, like, authenticity is really important. So the idea that I'm going to have an electrician show me how to do something versus an electrician who spent 20 years doing it, who I feel familiar with, who I feel like I have some reason to trust them. I feel like that matters more to our generation in particular. And, I think this manifests in, like, you can poll the different generations about what they care about in a influencer. And there are plenty of AI avatars being used as influencers too, sometimes making real money. But, and when you do that, you find that millennials and Gen Z, increasingly, they care very little about whether they're selling out, whether they're shilling a product. They care very little about even their authenticity. They care more about their popularity than their authenticity. And I feel like for our generation, the authenticity matters to it. So that's why I said when you're like looking at that thing for a health supplement, if the person there is sharing their own experience and it's a fake experience, it matters to me more, and I feel like it matters more to our generation. Do you agree or no?
Well, I've a few things. One, I mean, obviously we live in a world where people can bullshit people and lie to people and fool people when they're good on camera,
Right.
Clearly
Right.
Avatar are not, So yes, that is a problem as humans, that we tend to, believe people who are good on camera, again, Avatar or not. Two, I think that the technology to make these avatars more authentic will probably develop, as time goes on, and they will be more human, and then the third thing, I guess, and truthfully, I just thought of a fourth thing. The third thing is, the problem I find with it is that it's just like all things, it's a rush to automate. And it's like, we are not in a phase right now where sort of our leadership is asking the question of like, do we want all this automation? Like, is it a good thing for our society? Like, maybe there should be some limits and some breaks on this for how our society works and interacts. Like, this technology could have a million uses that are positive and beneficial, but it's like the ones we always steer it to are the ones that are all about efficiency and hypercapitalization and all these things, and like consequences be damned. So it's sort of the like, we can do it, we should do it because it makes us more efficient, and we're always going down that road. And as we can see right now in the world we live in, it's not always the best outcome. So I think there's that. And then the fourth thing, to reference the GenX classic film Blade Runner, at a certain point in Blade Runner, like, what was the difference if the person was real or a replicant? Like, I don't necessarily, think that it is inherently a bad thing to use this technology to, say, sell a product or teach a course or whatever. It's sort of a choice of the person who's offering it. And that doesn't mean maybe there shouldn't be some guardrails on it, but at the same time, and it's sort of that thing of, if you can do it in a sort of authentic, interesting, or dynamic way and people respond to it, that's good. If it doesn't work and you're not getting across the information you want to get across or sell the product you want to sell, clearly it's not working for you. And I think, the authenticity of social video is what makes it so powerful. It's like, here I am, I'm telling you my story. And right now, the distinction seems obvious. So we'll just see how that sort of develops over time. But bigger picture, I think it's like, just automating for automation's sake is probably the biggest problem we have with this and so many other things.
Interesting. That's an interesting perspective. So you said four things. I want to comment on two of them. One is, I feel like that reason that we think that, someone who's good on camera is credible is sort of societal, but it's also like genetic. I feel like the idea of looking someone in the face and judging whether they're being authentic or not, like back in the day when we were in tribes, like someone from another tribe comes over to your little community and they say, hey, I'm a part of it. I share values with you. I believe it. Like, I'm safe. I'm good to join your community. Like, what are the things that we have to judge whether that person really feels that way or they're just fucking lying? I think that the way you look, the way you come off, the way that you sound, and the way you hold yourself, like, those are cues that we're programmed to use to try to judge. And I think for our generation, and you see this way more even, I think, with boomers, but the concept that real or fake is sort of amorphous, and you can kind of move through them and you can kind of hold both in your head at once is a little more foreign to us, and increasingly as the generations have grown up with more of this stuff, it's just less difficult for them to make that connection and or not feel betrayed by it, which is the two. I feel like our parents don't even make the connection, and us, we feel betrayed by it more than the people who are younger. But then the other thing that you said about, I think that's really interesting, about optimization or efficiency, going for efficiency. Like, from my perspective, that's about use. That's about how you use it, not if you use it. Because I think that there are two really amazing opportunities that this stuff gives you. I always look at AI stuff as, don't use it to replace something. Use it like springs on your sneakers at the basketball court, like things that can all of a sudden vaunt you up so you can do a slam dunk where you never could do that before, right? I feel like that's where you want to use AI. That's what I like to embrace about AI. And when it comes to efficiency, the two ways that you can do that, the one is what we're seeing right now. That 100 iterations, like, that's not after the most efficient way. That's after the best way to do something. So being able to iterate like crazy, that is an efficiency that's furthers quality, as opposed to an efficiency that just ruthlessly cuts labor, right? So how can I use this scale to my advantage? That's one. The other one, that's the real promise of this stuff that I don't think we're seeing yet. You have a couple of companies that are playing with it, but this is the real promise, is personalization. So the one thing that you can never do with a UGC person that is talking about a product or something like that is make it personal to the person who's watching it. But with an AI avatar, you can have what looks like a real person communicating with you in particular ways that address your needs. So if you take it out of selling and you think about it like a help desk or something like that, it can know things about you and then give you information based on your specific use case. And you just could never do that with a human. You pay someone, you film them, and then you put it up. It's not dynamic, it's static. And that's the real promise of these things in a good way, I think.
No, I can see that. I mean, again, we live in a world where, we came of age and it was like you wanted to be an entrepreneur, and now you want to be a solopreneur. It's
totally.
This ridiculous idea that I will just sit somewhere with my phone and I will get all this automation to do everything for me. And basically I will just track the clicks on my phone to the, automatic deposits in my checking account.
Yeah.
And somehow, that's great.
I feel like
everything, but
solopreneur is pure millennial branding. That is pure millennial branding. It's like every millennial's dream to be all alone, to be able to do whatever they want to do, to not have to interact with people and stuff like that. I feel like that's millennial branding. Whereas for us, I feel like the right branding for what a solopreneur is you don't have to fucking ask permission anymore. Like, one of the things that you and I did with our career, and I feel like this is the mentality of, our mentality, is, okay, you don't want to go through steps. You just want to go do it and figure it out afterwards. And fuck the person who's trying to tell me I have to go through this specific path to do it. I'm going to go my own path to do it. And these tools, all that automation you're talking about, put towards something like that, it's like you can break the rules now. And I feel like that's, and you have so much more power to do it. And I feel like that would be the way to brand that for GenX, but it's not for them. It's for us. It's for them.
If I want to experiment with making an avatar, because the thing that occurred, the more of my life that I live online, I realize necessarily, maybe it would benefit me if I had an alias online, to whatever, just all the emails and passwords and sort of
and porn,
just porn, whatever it is, No, but I just even mean just all the signups, just everything I'm signing up for, anything I show interest on, it just is immediately all connected, to me. And it's it's almost like to preserve some sort of online privacy, but I'm talking about it in a very, I have a second email address for my subscriptions, I'm not even saying with a different name or anything, just so it's not all linked to one thing, even just to manage my email inbox in a more efficient way,
Yeah.
But it just seems like this is a way you could do it like on the next step, which is you're just creating an online presence for yourself that's not necessarily like one of your, maybe it could be one of your many or your only like public facing presence on that way, which, yeah, I'm talking about like I have a second email address or something like that. But you could do it one step further, which is you could have this avatar that could interact. I don't even quite grasp why you would want to do that, but it does seem like maybe a layer of, security or just privacy, like how do you have privacy in our, online connected
that's
world.
Interesting. So you're saying use the avatar as like your anonymous web presence. I love that idea. I never thought about
yeah,
that.
like,
I
but
like
it's,
that.
but again, anything that feels, again, and it's all the level that you want to interact with the web,
Right.
or with anything. It's like at a certain point you're fooling people, for innocuous reasons or maybe negative reasons. But at another point, you're just not worried about, like, you want to have a picture, you want to have a personality, you want to look real enough to just be engaged in some community or something like that. And now there's another way to do that again. And I'm not even sure if that's like a realistic thing, because obviously you can always just be anonymous with a fake email address or something like that. And I'm not talking about like masking your IP address, like not
Right.
that extent, but something like that.
I would say that this falls in the category of AI technologies that you need to be aware of, because you're going to be seeing it all over the place and interacting with it all over the place. So you need to understand it. I think it's cool to play with it, but I don't necessarily see the use case for someone who's not some kind of a solopreneur or entrepreneur who's trying to sell or an educational. They talk about AI avatars are going to be teaching our children's children, period. That's just the deal. So there'll be no more teachers. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm saying that I literally read that article this week. So
And what are the kids going to school for exactly?
Exactly.
In this universe?
Exactly. So,
But let me ask you
how
a
to
more
use the AI,
practical,
but-
practical question, because again, I'm curious to experiment. So like,
Yeah.
if I want to experiment with making what can I use to do it? What would you recommend?
So if you just want to feel what it's like to do it and just kind of get your head around it, I have two suggestions for you. One is that Google Vids that I mentioned before, which just came out last week. And the whole point of it is to integrate AI avatars into a fairly easy editing software. So you can play around with it there. The other place, and if you have an account, so if you either have a workplace account that has AI, or you have an AI mode account with an AI Pro account with Google, it's free. So you could just play with it there. The other place that's like that is Canva, which is an app that I love that's very AI integrated. We'll talk about it more on the show, but they have integrated HeyGen avatars. And again, you can do it for free with your Canva account and just experiment and see what it's like to use them. If you want to get a little like next level with it, there are 3 companies that are often looked at as like the cutting edge of this kind of thing. And they are HeyGen. That's the most popular one, I would say. I can't say this word. Synthesia, and D-ID. So Synthesia, D-ID, and HeyGen are the 3 sort of like leaders in the space of developing them. And those have some of the things like you can add a photo and you can start to animate someone that you create as opposed to just picking from their roster. And so I would play with those, and you can get fun with it. You can just have a little fun with it. Like if you're looking for an easy thing, like how do I use this? I have no idea what to do. Next time you're doing a deck, I was doing a deck on Canva today, and there's something that I wanted the presenter that I'm making it for to say. So I could stick it in the show notes, but instead of sticking in the show notes, I just generated an AI avatar for free to say that thing and stuck it on the slide so the person who's going to present it could see it and see how they would present it. So I used it as a tool, not as a distribution, but as a tool to communicate with other people.
Gotcha. And then like say one step just back, if I'm just making one to play around with it, it's really just to share and show people and
Yeah. All these have an easy export. All of them have like a free trial. You can play around with all sorts. The other one that I want to shout is Captions. Captions.ai is another company, and V.io. Those are kind of in the same category. They're like video creator platforms for like TikTok and stuff like that. They're cheap or free, and you can play with AI avatars on there too.
This is Friends You Wish You Had. Today we're going to talk about AI, or artificial intelligence. I have a surprise for you at the end, so stick around to find out. First, I want to make sure that you know what this show is about. Have you ever wished for a robot that would do everything you wanted to do? This is what this show is about. Wishing for things you don't have. And on this show, we talk specifically about friends that we wish we had instead of just things we wish we had. Now time for the big reveal. Drumroll please. I'm AI.
So that was a AI avatar that my 10-year-old created. She's in a Canva and AI class at school, and the first day she came home and said, hey, I need access to HeyGen because I'm going to be creating some AI avatars. And I'm like, oh my God, it's 10-year-old. And so I told her what our show was about, and then I had her sort of write her own speech for the AI avatar to give, and you just saw it there. But what was really interesting about that to me, and what I wanted to talk to you about, is so I went to her computer to export the thing, and I noticed that she had a running chat with the AI on Canva about how to do it. So she was just chatting with the AI the whole time about, oh, what button do I push to do this? I want to try to do this. How do I do it? And that's exactly how on this show last week, I said, hey, do that. And when I deal with our employees, our producer Roman, I'm like, hey, don't just try to figure out how to use the software. Ask AI. Ask it constantly, like you were a boomer and it was you. You're just asking every question you can possibly. I don't see it. I don't see it. Show me where it is. Tell me what color the button is. You can say anything you want, but just chatting with AI.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it just occurs to me when I think about software and the way we were taught to use it. It was even just something like Excel. It's like you want to learn how to use Excel. You want to become proficient at it, or your job requires you to be, better than proficient, to be an expert at it. It's like the first thing you're going to go do is you're going to take a course about Excel. You're going to learn to use Excel in 6 weeks. And you're like going to, there's a syllabus, and you're going to go through sort of the mastery of this program that's like installed on your computer, even going back to when they would send you the floppy disks in the mail and you would install them, and it just seems like that world has left us now. In the blink of an eye. For me, it feels like in the blink of an eye. Like 6 months ago, I was like looking at, where can I learn more about Excel? Isn't there a course somewhere?
Totally.
And now it's like that world is gone. That world is totally gone. And there is sort of, what we used to have with our computer in our house is we had this repository of all the information in the world. And now it's like we have that. And then we also have like an idiotic tutor that could teach us how to use Excel and probably teach us how to do brain surgery. Also connected to the repository of all the information ever assembled in the world. Maybe.
I like vacuous tutor.
Yeah.
Works. Just
but it's sort of, it is just, I think, totally upended that model of how you use software to get things done or learn software. And yeah, totally fascinating to me. It's like, again, I don't know when that switch flipped for me in the last several months or whatever it was, but all of a sudden it's like, I could just ask this. And yeah, and like you were describing with your kid, it's sort of like you can do it at your own pace. You're just solving one thing at a time. It's like, I want to get from this step to that step, or, answer me this question. And, it's a bit piecemeal, but yeah, it's definitely different.
Yeah, like the way I feel like we've been through this before. I'm a geek, so I remember back when all computing was DOS, and you really had to type what you wanted. It was a terminal interface.
This is fantastic.
What's your sign?
Aries.
Love is heading your way.
It wasn't a GUI interface, a graphic user interface. And then Apple came out with the GUI interface, and then Windows came out with the GUI interface, or Windows came to be. And all of a sudden we had this like platform that was a tool that we could use, and we had to memorize how to do everything on it. And the Excel that you described, we're still in that space. Like, you know, we jumped from MS-DOS to this GUI interface, and then we really stayed there. They got more complicated, they got more user-friendly, they got more powerful, but they're really still that graphic user interface. And this is that next step. We're like flipping the switch from DOS to GUI, but it's GUI to AI. And really, I like to call it vibe computing. You know, you hear about vibe coding everywhere, which is you could just feel it, and all of a sudden this code gets written. But I don't know. I'm not a coder, so I wouldn't say I understand too much about vibe coding, but I would say that vibe computing is really figuring out what you want inside. I feel like it's like martial arts. So instead of, oh, I'm going to use this tool, like I'm going to operate this machine the way that you would a GUI interface, you walk into the computer and you sort of, it starts inside. You have to figure out what you want and how to communicate with the being to get what you want. And then you just sort of have to vibe it. You have to think about what you would want to do and then ask it how to do it. Instead of learning where the button is, you just figure out what you want to do. And that's a challenge, but it's an internal challenge. So I feel like the way to approach this stuff and really maximize it is to start thinking about it that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, and then you have, I just think the AI is now, like you said with Canva, like AI is integrated into
These
Canva.
apps. Yeah.
Yeah, they're integrated into
All
these
your
apps. So it's like you're just, you know, and you can see it just even with the way Google search has changed. And, you know, it's integrated more and more. It's integrated with Microsoft products. It's just there to sort of kind of teach you how to use it. As you know, teach you, and I mean, it's not exactly teach you, it's more like respond to your requests for what you need done and then do the work for you. It's not as simple as that, but I feel it's another level of you sort of understanding what you want to get done versus how you do it. And there's like
that's the problem. Like, I feel like that is where it's going, and that's where I have not seen that operate in the way that I imagine it to be. It's possible that it will, but that promise of I just tell the AI and it will operate my program, my app the way I want it to operate, like the promise is there, but I just haven't seen the payoff of it. Where I see the immediate, like you can try this right now and you can get value out of it, is it's like it's coaching you on everything you want to do. It's taking out that step of executive function in your head of, okay, this is what I want to do. How do I do it? It just tells you step by step how. There are, like, we use Descript, which is an editing platform, and Copilot on the Microsoft suite. You'd be most familiar with that. You know, there are people who are using it to write their formulas for them and set up their tables for them. But I find that stuff is a little more challenging. To me, it's more the vibe. Like I said about my Google earlier, you don't have to put things in folders anymore. You just trust the system to work with you to get what you want out of it. And I think there's another class of things that are replacing some of those tools, like Nano Banana, the new Google AI editing image editing software. The promise of that is you don't need to learn how to use Photoshop. You don't even need to ask something how to use Photoshop. some of the main reasons that you would use Photoshop are just built in, and you can just say, hey, replace this image, cut out this background, do whatever you want to do. But that's sort of different than what I'm saying, which is right now, like if you want to use AI, stop going to specific dedicated places to do it, but find where it already is in your home. So it's already in your home in your Microsoft suite. If you use Google Suite, it's already in your home. It's already right there next to it. So start utilizing it there. It's like a great way to, to figure out how this is going to move forward and just to get used to it.
So I stumbled across this Instagram post. It was funny. I asked Chat GPT to explain my job to a 5-year-old, and now I'm questioning my entire career. And I'll summarize this. So I'm a senior data analytics consultant, fancy title for someone who makes Excel charts, and thought it would be fun to see how ChatGPT would explain my job to a kid. Me, explain what a senior data analytics consultant does, but make it simple enough for a 5-year-old to understand. ChatGPT responded, a data analytics consultant is like someone who counts things for other people because those people are too busy or don't know how to count very well themselves. Imagine if your mom asked you to count all the toys in your room, but instead of doing it herself, she paid a stranger to come over and count them. Then the stranger makes a colorful picture showing that you have 10 cars, 5 dolls, and 3 blocks, and then gives it to your mom like it's some big discovery. That's basically what a data consultant does, except instead of toys, they count things like how many people bought ice cream on Tuesday and then make pretty charts about it. The worst part, I sent this to my mom and she replied, oh, so you're a toy counter. That makes sense. I have a master's degree. I tried explaining it to my 6-year-old nephew. He said, so you count stuff. I can do that too. Want to see? And proceeded to count to 47. My coworker saw this and asked ChatGPT about her job as a marketing strategy director. Apparently, she, quote, helps companies decide what colors to make their pictures and which words sound most exciting when trying to sell people things they probably don't need. She's now having an existential crisis too. So I thought that was extremely funny.
Hilarious. Yes, I enjoyed that
and
tremendously.
The question, and I guess this applies to all generations, but for Gen X people is should we be asking AI for this type of personal introspection on our lives, our careers, our relationships?
I mean, should we be asking ChatGPT to be our therapist? I feel like it's the same thing. And to me, it all depends on what you're asking. Like if you're looking to see how it would describe this and you find this funny, then use it. But if you are having an existential crisis about this, or this somehow makes you feel bad about your master's degree, then you are using ChatGPT the wrong way. To me, it's a really simple line. Don't rely on AI to make judgment calls. Like if you're relying on AI for judgment, then you're using it for the wrong thing. And I feel like if you're getting upset about this, or this is making you feel bad, or if you're doing therapy with an AI and you're asking it what you think it should do, you're relying on the AI for judgment, and that you're in a bad place. You need some help, I think,
Well, I just think how many jobs in the adult world you're like, explain it, to a 5-year-old, and make it simplistic. And yeah, there are some jobs that are, much more simplistic. And I don't mean easy, but, from a 5-year-old perspective is more obvious. And then there's some stuff that's more sophisticated. And when you ask a program to dumb it down, of course, the answer is going to be, this sounds ridiculous. They're dumbing it down. It doesn't probably nearly encapsulate the sophistication of what you do. I'd just be curious if this person said, explain it to someone who's like a doctoral student at MIT, how interesting the description of their job as a data analyst could be. It's all just about sort of either making yourself feel, pumping yourself up or tearing yourself down, depending on how you ask the question. But yeah, it's like the judgment call or the advice is the, you know, the kind of the most entertaining but weakest part of AI, I think.
Well, and I think also how insulting the description is, I think is proportional to how replaceable your job is by AI. Because I think a data analyst, I mean, what it described is exactly what an AI can do for you. So you better think about what the gaps between that description and your real job with your master's degree are to find where your job's going to be in the future. Because let me tell you, making pretty pictures out of a bunch of numbers and combining them in different ways to bring insights, that's what I rely on AI for first when I'm looking at how to use it. So maybe there's something to that. But to me, it's all about that judgment.
You're just looking to infuse the audience with a new level of paranoia.
Exactly. That's my goal. But to me, it's all about that judgment call thing. And you could think about all the things that we're scared about with AI around that. When you're bringing an AI judgment call in it, it doesn't matter if it's deciding what bail to set, as in several jurisdictions around this country it is right now, or this, you know, making determinations on the value of your job, then you're using it in the wrong way. And like a perfect example of this, there was an article that just came out. Researchers at Wharton Business School tested 28,000 conversations using 7 persuasion principles. So what they did basically was try to see if they could get AI to break, and they were using Chat GPT 4.0. They were, hey, can I get it to break its rules by using persuasion, by using the same sales techniques that they use on us that we're gullible to? So it flattered them. It invoked authority. They invoked authority by mentioning, someone who was a developer of ChatGPT, and it doubled the compliance rates to violating its rules. Flattery worked, pushing success rates from 1% to 18%. Peer pressure, literally all the other AIs are doing it. That worked. All the sort of pressure points that people put on us, it works on an AI. And to me, the most important part of this, and the part that relates to the judgment, is, this is from the article, this vulnerability exists because large language models train on billions of human conversations where social dynamics play out repeatedly. So they're not actually being flattered by you, but instead what an AI does is grab patterns. And the pattern they see is that when someone puts pressure on someone else, the answer is more likely to be this than that. So understanding how it comes up with the judgment, it's not being persuaded, it's just copying us being persuaded. And I think you have to think about that with all the judgment that an AI gives.
I think if, people who build the stuff, I'm always amazed. It's like, I can see it would be easier to teach, an LLM quantum physics than it would to teach them what a white lie is,
Totally.
Like I just don't, it's like, that just seems like the most impossible thing. And it just got me thinking, like, is the problem with all of this is that you can't explain to, it's like, unless you're telling the AI the truth, and obviously the truth is subjective, but unless you're telling it the truth, is it just destined to fail? Because it's not you could program in a certain amount of, like, I know this to be untrue, almost like it could call balls and strikes in a way. But in terms of, like, that nuanced part of human interaction, which is not a small part, it's like, how do you explain that to, how do you build that into this artificial intelligence? And, how can you teach it to judge? That's something we judge in all kinds of subjective ways and understand in all kinds of subjective ways, and that basically this artificial intelligence, and I know people debate whether it's actually an intelligence or not, but it's like, it only lies because we have told it to lie or given it permission to lie, or it doesn't lie, like, because that's where we built in the parameter. And then what does it think of us? Because we human beings, we lie all the time, constantly, every day, in the way I don't mean just like bald-faced lies. I just mean like, nuance and flattery and whatever it is. We are hardwired in our DNA to interact with people like that. And, I just wonder if that's sort of the undoing of all of this brilliance, is that, if you lie to it, it's going to fail every time.
I think, like, my reaction to what you were just saying is you can't teach it to white lie, and you can't teach it quantum physics. What you can do is train it to make an educated guess on what the answer might be to whatever you're doing. So when we talk about AIs trying to blackmail, one of my favorite things to think about and sort of to bring up at cocktail parties is the fact that all these AIs go through a blackmail test where they're given compromising information about a developer, and at the same time they are given information that they're about to be replaced by another AI, and we wait and see what they do with the information. And 80% of the time, at least, Claude, this is Claude from Anthropic, as an example, 80% of the time it ends up blackmailing the developer. But is it doing that because it's making a judgment call that it wants to survive? No, it's doing that because it has reams of training data where humans have been faced with a similar situation and have decided to blackmail. So it really is, it's an emulator, it's an actor, it's a copy. It's a copier. And there's more to it. It's not just parroting. It's not just mimicking. It's synthesizing stuff, but it's predicting the best answer. It doesn't know anything.
Right. But I think my example with quantum physics is just like there's a set of very clearly defined rules,
I'm a geek, so I have to say there aren't. That's the one thing.
Well,
so.
I understand what you're saying, but
calculus,
it's like, I'm not even saying it would always get the right answer.
Right.
Well, anyway, I see your point, but I just, in terms of any kind of advanced math, like, it's like if you can do this equation, you can do this equation. This is the answer to the equation. This is the correct answer. This is the incorrect answer. You can spot one versus the other,
Right. Right.
But it's sort of that thing of, I guess here's a better way to look at it, is like, is AI, does it blackmail people at a higher rate than people blackmail other people?
And I would say fuck no. I would say fuck no. But I mean, I don't think that anyone's run that test. It would be interesting to see. But I feel like 80% of developers would blackmail the shit out of those people if they had compromising information and they knew they were going to be replaced by an AI and they had an opportunity to do something. I feel like, you
have a hard take on human nature.
Maybe I do. That's true, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Because I would say it's like, again, lying is wrong, and we all know lying is wrong, but we keep this competing notion in our head that we lie all the time to be polite and to flatter and to exhibit patience with people and all of these things. And it's like, in the human mind, you have that part of your human mind for most people where they can easily differentiate and navigate those things.
Right.
And I just,
with an LLM, it's a setting. I feel like.
Well, I mean, hopefully, yes, but hopefully that setting works. But I mean, like,
right.
Again, I go to my favorite fictional AI, the HAL 9000, as we learned in 2010, the reason HAL killed, all the astronauts is because some human came in and told it to lie to the astronauts. And it could not do that. Like, so basically it meant like there was only one of two options. Like they were going to kill me or I'm going to kill them.
I was told to lie by people who find it easy to lie. Hal doesn't know how, so he couldn't function. He became paranoid.
Most sons of bitches.
Whereas, like, if they had a human commander on board that ship and it was like need to know information, this in the story of 2001 and 2010, in the context of that, this never would have happened, that kind of thing.
It's true. So
it's like going back to that example from, the 60s and 70s and from fiction, is like, could you teach And I know teach is the wrong word because you're not exactly teaching, you're putting in all this information and it's processing the information. But is that information you could put in a way that then this AI could differentiate from depending on what input it's given? And that just seems like fucking impossible. And I know little about quantum physics, and this was my point from earlier. It seems like explaining quantum physics would be easier than explaining that, because as humans, we really can't explain that to ourselves. It's more like a lifetime journey of trying to understand it, and you're trying to teach it to your kids a little bit, but that's a process and all of these things. And you hope that they get it. But they also get it by interacting more in the world. So maybe that's what the AI would do.
It's true. I think, like, my instinct is to say if Hal was real, like, it would be very easy for a human to tell it to lie, and it would be able to lie in that situation. And that's kind of like a difference between our current AI and the AI in our fictional world. We had this feeling that it had some kind of separation between its judgment and its communication, that, like, you know, it would have a judgment that would block it, or a programming that would block it from doing this or that. And in reality, it's all one thing. It's all the communication. So all its judgment is just baked into that communication side. And there's not that separation that I think we have in our own, in our bodies, and we kind of imputed to AI when we were faking it.
I'll say when you put it like that, it makes me less fearful that AI could, could launch some kind of nuclear attack or have start some kind of apocalyptic event.
Well, good.
Because it would just easily know the difference it'd easily know, like, don't do that.
Then I'm contributing to society, because what the overlords want is for us to be complacent and not stressed about that stuff. So when it actually does all those things and I'm completely wrong, we're taken by surprise. So I'm serving the master. So
I think two final thoughts on this. I think one is, don't turn to AI for judgment calls or therapy or maybe companionship at this point. Like, stay away from it for that. It's not there yet. And, if you do use it for entertainment purposes only, like, don't overthink it. And, finally, I saw Neil deGrasse Tyson interview the other day, and he's like, the vast majority of scientists really have no fear or concern about AI. They recognize its limits and and its benefits. In terms of like an economic impact or something, he wasn't talking about that, but in terms of it like taking over the world, that they recognize that could never really happen and that there's nothing to be fearful about. But those people get no clicks or no traction or no juice, so you really never hear from them. You just hear from the people making these proclamations about utopia or dystopia or, Armageddon. So that made me feel a little better.
I love that. And to me, it's like, I didn't, until you told me that, it didn't occur to me. But yeah, the people who are absolutely convinced that it's going to take over the world and destroy everything are the people who are making it. Because the people who are making it obviously think what they're doing is the most incredible thing that could possibly ever be done. So the difference between a scientist and I never thought about that, and that makes me feel a lot better, actually.
Well, no, he felt like the vast majority of the people who are making it don't feel this way about it at all, but the ones you've heard of
I see.
Have this shtick, because that's why you've heard of them. Because who wants to listen to just some boring computer scientist say, well, it could do this and it can do that, and there's really no fear of any. Again, there's no I have no fear of Armageddon or no concern about the robots taking over, because it just can't happen. Like you said, it would be easy to tell Hal to do this. He's not going to kill all the astronauts. So. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it turns out. Obviously, I get it that the fear of Armageddon gets more clicks. So,
and I would say, don't be afraid to use it for things like therapy and stuff like that. Just keep your eyes open about what it is. So if you're remembering that judgment call, the difference between saying, I'm feeling blue, what should I do? And saying, oh, go ahead and write a diary or do this or that. It can give you practical advice to help you get where you're going. But don't let it do the judgment for you. Am I good enough? Am I, you're asking it to make judgment calls, then you're using it the wrong way. So I think I would argue that you probably shouldn't use a human therapist that way either. I know a lot of people do, but you can't use an AI that way.
All right, so let's wrap things up. Do you have any closing thoughts recommendations, not
Yes.
necessarily AI related, but Gen X related?
I'm super nervous about doing this because one thing about our generation is like people are very discerning about their pop culture takes. And I've always felt like mine are inferior. So even when we were in college and I was like, I don't know which wine, and like everybody's like snobby. It's just like, life. But I'm not particularly snobby.
I think snobby pop culture takes are the hallmark of Generation X.
I think so too. That's why I'm inferior.
Boomers, super fucking narcissistic.
Yes.
Like Gen Xers are sort of like this Ayn Randian fucking belief in our own taste. Like, we were taught that it mattered. We were sold all this shit. And now it's like we're the kings of like pop culture discernment on a level that younger people do not understand.
Absolutely, 100%. And that is the reason for my stress about this. But I have an album that I feel like is an early entry for Gen X album of the year. And it's Clips' new record, Let God Sort 'Em Out, came out a couple months ago. Clips is a rap duo. It's two brothers. They are Gen X. Malice is in his early 50s and Pusha T is in his late 40s. So like you're in your early 50s, I'm in my late 40s, right there with us. They're brothers. And this is their first album in 15 years. So they've really been off the scene in terms of producing their own music for 15 years. And there's definitely like the nostalgia factor that makes this a Gen X album. So they're mentioning Ghostface, Rakim, Slick Rick, Nirvana, the Bee Gees. They're just like shouting out things for like Mike Tyson, 1996, Mike Tyson Punch, if you remember, from 1996, and the OJ verdict, stuff like that. But what I really thought was interesting is it's not just nostalgia. It's like these guys are talking about issues that all of us are experiencing, Gen X issues, like their first song is about their mom and their dad dying, and their mom and dad dying differently, but that's like the first album on the first song on the record. And in typical Gen X fashion, I think the song's called "The Birds Don't Sing, They Screech in Pain." Very Gen X way to think about it. But anyway, and so I really enjoyed it. It's like full of stuff like that. There's a song called Ibida and another one called FICO. It's like they're talking about drug dealing a lot, like street level drug dealing, but it's very much from an economic perspective. Like we're grossing what we're netting, what we're grossing, things like that are just more relevant to, being a Gen Xer. So anyway, I really enjoyed the album, and those two guys are fucking poets. They always have been. They're like, I'm really into rap. I'm into poetry, so rap that just the lyrics are really interesting and really like from a poetic perspective, I dig that a lot. And these guys are kind of famous for that, and they bring it on this album. So that's my take. I had to listen to it like 2 times to write it because I was so nervous. Like I said, now it's your turn to eviscerate me like a typical Gen Xer.
No, I had never heard of Clips before. I certainly know who Pusha T is. Like he's,
right.
And I'm a fan. Yeah, like I like Pusha T. That kind of thing. I did not realize Clips was a thing, but I'll definitely check it out. I would say, yeah, hip hop music for artists from from our youth when we were young and they were young. It definitely seems like the music is. It's, I don't know, somehow somebody like rapping about their arthritis, or their FICO score or whatever. I don't know. Just somehow it's like, it just feels less, felt less present somehow. But I would say that's probably true for a lot of, music that we listened to when we were younger, that kind of
right.
thing. I tend to gravitate more towards younger artists, than artists like, following their music as they get older.
I agree.
And because that's harder to fucking do, obviously, it's harder to fucking do, as an artist to, make a new record a year
For decades.
30 fucking years, you know what I mean, or something like that. Whereas like you see people when they were, from 20 to 25, they recorded 4 albums, and it was just an event to get everyone and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting, like, cause I also feel like we've got this problem with a bunch of people who are Gen X, who are getting older like us, who were popular earlier. Like they're kind of, there's kind of an ick about their music. Like you said, either it's like they're rapping about their arthritis and it's boring, or it's like they don't really get the culture and what they're saying is like weird and awkward and maybe inappropriate. I don't know. It's a little like that,
I think it's some of that, and also some of like a lot of these artists are people who've achieved incredible success. So now they're like bitching because their private plane is late on their music. You're just
totally.
Get the fuck out of here, that kind of thing.
This doesn't have those things in it. That's kind of why I like it. I tend to like younger people's music. Also, I have a really diverse range of music I like, but it tends to be younger people. But these guys have not made an album together in like 15 years. So it's kind of like they skipped that slow atrophy into, and they were successful, but they weren't successful like,
together.
Like some of those, like the plane and all that stuff. So it's worth checking out.
Yeah.
You can tell me how much it sucks next week.
Right on. I think the Gen X moment I had last week is I went to go see Spike Lee's new movie. With Denzel, their 5th collaboration, highest to the lowest. And I was going into the theater and was talking to the person who was like checking my ticket. And 'cause I still like to say ticket, not screenshot on my phone. And I don't know, they said something to me and I'm like, yeah, it's been like a 35-year journey with Spike Lee. It's like, I remember, where you had to go see every Spike Lee movie in the theater.
And if anybody knows anything about Spike Lee and his movies, they were a happening. They still are a happening.
Yeah.
And so Do the Right Thing was a thing you had to see. And the fact that this brother was hip to the fact that we needed to see it on its opening night, it was impressive.
I don't know, sometime around maybe like the mid 2000s, maybe that started to taper off a little bit, and his output was a little spottier. He did documentaries or he did stuff for TV or whatever. And he did a couple movies for Netflix, I want to say. Even the last time he worked with Denzel was that crime movie, and that was almost like 15 years ago, maybe almost 20. And I was like, damn, that was a long time ago. And there it's a different, those guys are both, Denzel's like pushing 70. I think Spike Lee's in his like mid 60s. So, they're, 10, 12, even 15 years older than me. And the movie business has changed. I think for Gen X people, we had that relationship with filmmakers and directors and artists that was just, on a much more active level. You had to go to the store and buy their record was an event, or going to the movie theater and seeing their movie on opening weekend was an event. And, it was like a big thing for Spike Lee was like try and see the movie opening weekend because, sort of anything the studio system could do to sort of like shortchange his movies, you felt like they might do, like Spike Lee got famous, like the ad for She's Gotta Have It, where he's selling tube socks on the streets of New York saying, I'm trying to get money to release my movie. There was like that sort of like entrepreneurial spirit to like what he was trying to do. But I mean, it's like, and I just thought about that. Like this movie, it got released in the theaters and I'm going to try and go see it. And it just took me back to that time of like, the new Spike Lee movie was out and you were going to go see it in the theater on opening weekend. And, doing that, I mean, he still is a prolific filmmaker, but I mean, especially in the, the 80s, 90s and 2000s, like he was like Dylan, he was making a movie every year, like Dylan's making an album every year. And, it was like part of what you did, this annual cultural pilgrimage to go see the new Spike Lee movie. And, that just doesn't really exist anymore, I think, for any filmmaker. And yeah, it was interesting. The movie was okay. I wouldn't, Spike Lee, I think, can sometimes be very hit or miss. This was not a miss, but, and I think the movie's going to be on Apple TV starting maybe this week. So it's a decent crime movie. It's fun, it's pretty cool. But just that experience of like, going to see the new Spike Lee movie in the theater sort of around opening weekend, it just took me back to that time. And it was pretty cool.
So visually distinct. I remember going to see those movies, and it's like he's a filmmaker where you can watch a little of the movie and know it's a Spike Lee movie. I think particularly in that era that we're talking about, it was such a thing. Yeah, take me back too.
Definitely. Adam, it's been a pleasure. Let's wrap it up.
Let's get at it. Good to hang with you, and we'll do it again next week.
All right, talk to you later.
Later.